through this lane. You go straight up the road.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Archit Tashadri. Thanks so much for joining us this Sunday, June the 4th. The time now is 11:30 in the morning in New York, 4:30 in the afternoon in London, and 9 p.m. here in New Delhi. Tonight, we go in depth regarding the deadly London terror attack. Just days after 22 people were killed in an explosion at a pop concert in Manchester, London this time is rocked by yet another terror attack. Here's the latest that we know this hour. 7 people died and around 50 others were hurt when attackers went on a rampage in central London. It is the second attack to strike the United Kingdom in less than a fortnight. Even though the attackers were neutralized and 12 people were arrested in connection to the attack, there are bigger questions that we must now draw our attention to. Is this a result of the internal tussle between the two intelligence agencies of the country? Or is this part of a revenge attack following the UK's active role in fighting Islamic terrorism in the Middle East? We're going to have a group of experts talk about all of these in just a moment. But first, here's the report. As voters in the UK head to the polls for the June 8th elections, just days away, the issue of national security is back in the spotlight. British Prime Minister Theresa May, with the ruling Conservative Party, has cancelled campaigning on Sunday along with the opposition Labour Party. Campaigning will start Monday. Theresa May says the June 8th election will not be postponed. May chaired an emergency Cobra meet on security with senior ministers and says the internet should be regulated to stop Islamic terrorists.
As a mark of respect, the two political parties have suspended our national campaigns for today. But violence can never be allowed to disrupt the democratic process. So those campaigns will resume in full tomorrow. And the general election will go ahead, as planned, on Thursday.
This latest terror attack happened near London Bridge on a busy Saturday night around 10 p.m. local time. Thousands of people were out partying in the area. It is a major transportation hub and packed with restaurants and bars.
I can confirm 7 people have died. 48 people are in hospitals across London. Some of them are critical with life-threatening conditions. At the moment, as I speak, some are in theatre. So I'm sure I speak for all of London and the country when I say our thoughts are with the families and friends of all those affected by the horrific attack last night.
Police say 3 attackers wore explosive-looking vests. They drove a van at high speed and then struck passengers on the London Bridge. It turns out those vests were in fact a hoax.
Current information is that 48 people have been injured and 48 people were indeed taken to hospital for treatment. Just to remind you, we were called at 10:08 p.m. last night, initially to reports that a vehicle had struck pedestrians on London Bridge. That vehicle continued to drive from London Bridge to Borough Market.
To say the attackers then got out of the van with long knives. They then went on a stabbing spree at Borough Market. Panic and chaos soon unfolded as people ran to nearby cafes and bars for cover. Some started to throw tables and chairs at the attackers to protect themselves.
I see only 2 boys put the door in front with us, and the door is closing and then going another way. Just only I see that.
This attack comes just 2 weeks since the Manchester terror attack in the UK, where a suicide bomber killed 22 people at an Ariana Grande concert. Europe has seen several similar attacks over the past few years, including Berlin, Nice, Brussels, and Paris, mostly by Islamic militants. London is not new to terror attacks. Just this March, a man ran passengers at Westminster Bridge before crashing into the gates of Parliament, killing 5 people, including a police officer. World leaders condemned the attack, including French President Emmanuel Macron, US President Donald Trump, and Australian Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull. Reporting, Archit Tashadri, WION. The UK is recovering from its 3rd terror attack in just 3 months. This latest attack, again, happening Sunday night around 10 o'clock local time. That's around 2:30 here in New Delhi. So it's been nearly 24 hours since all of this unfolded. Again, a quick recap. Terrorists rammed a van on the London Bridge, hitting innocent bystanders. Then they started a stabbing spree at a nearby market, the Borough Market. Police say the attackers killed 7 people. They sent around 50 others to the hospital. Reporters say that 21 of those people are still in critical condition. We got an update just a short while ago. Police then shot and killed 3 of those suspects and arrested already 12 people in connection to the attack, including 4 women. Let's now introduce our guests for tonight's discussion. This segment will focus on UK terror specifically. We have security analyst Joel Whitaker joining us live from Iraq. We have a former Royal Marines commando joining us from Manchester, Emil Gesson, as well as WION's bureau chief, Mandy Clark, joining us live from London, where the scene unfolded. But before we start tonight's discussion, let's listen in to British Prime Minister Theresa May and how she addressed Londoners who faced yet another bolt of the blue who witnessed last night's deadly attack.
It is an ideology that is a perversion of Islam and a perversion of the truth. Defeating this ideology is one of the great challenges of our time, but it cannot be defeated through military intervention alone. It will not be defeated through the maintenance of a permanent defensive counter-terrorism operation, however skillful its leaders and practitioners. It will only be defeated when we turn people's minds away from this violence and make them understand that our values, pluralistic British values, are superior to anything offered by the preachers and supporters of hate. We need to work with allied democratic governments to reach international agreements that regulate cyberspace to prevent the spread of extremist and terrorism planning. And we need to do everything we can at home to reduce the risks of extremism online. We must come together, we must pull together, and united, we will take on and defeat our enemies.
All right, let's get our guests now joining us on this discussion. Let's first start with Mandy Clark, who is in London, where the scene of all of this unfolded. Mandy, just a short while ago, we heard from the Assistant Commissioner of the Met, who gave an update. We know that 21 people are still in critical condition. 36 people still remain in the hospital. That death toll right now stands at 7. 3 of the suspects killed. What is the mood like there on the ground? You've been there talking to people, seeing the mood there at London Bridge as well as Borough Market. How has the scene changed since the attack, almost 24 hours to the exact moment? Mandy.
Well, we've seen quite a few people come and gather, just curious bystanders, and a lot of members of the public who live in the area. The place has been completely cordoned off, and this cordon is going to remain probably till the early hours of this morning. That's been remained clear. There is a sense of shock, but also of defiance, really, that it won't change the way of life here in London. London has faced numerous terrorist attacks, and speaking to one person, they said that, the day we stop going out, the day we stop doing what we normally do is the day the terrorists win. So certainly the overall mood is upset, but also defiance.
All right, let's now go over to Joel Whitaker standing by in Iraq. Joel, you've covered security a lot of times with regards to this. This is the 3rd such situation the UK is dealing with. The Westminster attack back in March, what happened in Manchester just 2 weeks back, and now this. Why is the UK being targeted? Why has it become such a hotbed for terror?
Yeah, well, it's multiple reasons. I mean, obviously the UK's involvement in Iraq and Syria will give terrorists who are back in the UK reason to want to cause damage to the UK's infrastructure and interests. It's if you look at Daesh or ISIS, in Syria and in Iraq. It's certainly on the back foot now. It's a good time for a terrorist organisation such as IS to try and divert attention from it's actually losing battle and losing ground in Syria and northern Iraq. And so, therefore, you could argue that actually by those terrorists committing acts in the UK, it's diverting attention away from their losses abroad. But also, don't forget their ideology is such that they hate, and they certainly hate Western democracy. They hate our way of life, our freedoms. You know, we've seen lots of people interviewed today who talked about they were out enjoying a nice evening, a Saturday evening as it was in the UK, early hours Sunday morning, enjoying some drinks and sociability. And these terrorists, they don't like that. And so their hatred spills over into violence. And that's what we're seeing in the UK. We're seeing it, of course, globally. But certainly at the moment, we're seeing it in the UK. And I guess as well with the lead up to the elections in a few days, it's potentially a good time. The terrorists will see it as a good time to garner more media attention for their cause.
All right, let me now go over to Emil, who's also joining us from Manchester. You know, Joel touched upon a good point there, talking about the upcoming election, the spotlight back on national security yet again. There was a little bit of a disconnect. The mayor saying that they should perhaps postpone the June 8th elections, but Theresa May clarifying, saying nothing will be postponed. The elections will happen, even though campaigning is stopped by both parties on Sunday. It'll resume again on Monday. Let me ask you, Emil, you know, with regards to national security, how much of a role is that going to play and impact voters' minds this Thursday when they head to vote?
Yeah, Theresa May said enough's enough. So a lot of people now, the frustration here in Manchester and in London and across the country is people want to know what's going to go on. There's so many attacks that are going on in mainland UK and in Europe. Enough is enough now. And so people will be looking at the political leaders to see how they're going to tackle this issue. And as Theresa May mentioned, I think the first place to start tackling this is online, on how these third-generation Islamic extremists, homegrown terrorists, grown up in the UK, educated in the UK, and they turn to radicalisation. And I think this is what they need to tackle here. But without a doubt, people will still turn out on Thursday for the general election, because that won't stop us here in the United Kingdom.
And let me also ask you, with regards to these, terrorism, are these attackers perhaps, right now we know there were 3 suspects that were killed, 12 people arrested, 4 of them women. No word on if there are any other attackers out there, but do we know if these attackers are perhaps homegrown, inspired by groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda? What do we know at this point about the type of attackers that are out there? Let me start with Emil first.
There's no information at the moment on who these attackers are, because the intelligence service will still be doing their investigation. A few weeks ago, I was in Mosul city, and obviously Islamic State are losing the grip out in the Middle East, and soon they're going to be losing ground in Syria. Their online magazine stated, don't come out to join the caliphate, stay at home, carry out attacks using vehicles, fire and knives. And this is what we're seeing now, is these guys who, all people, men and women, who are getting inspired online, radicalised by people potentially in the mosques and in social groups, who are then going out and carrying out these attacks. And as the last speaker said, they want to destroy us, and there is no let up at the moment. And it is a big issue with an insurgents. That's what we've got in the UK and in Europe, is an insurgency war going on. And these people are sunk into the shadows, and they're coming out once they get radicalised, and they're carrying out these attacks. And look at the targets they're taking out. Concert in Manchester, people enjoying a Saturday night out. There is no limit to these people, and the government in the UK needs to start doing more to safeguard the citizens of this country, and also to deal with these people. There's over 4,000 people potentially on a terrorist watch list in the UK. Of course, the intelligence service and the police can't monitor all 4,000 of these people, but more needs to be done. Intelligence service need more powers, and the police need more powers, because here in the UK, people are getting fed up now. I want to, as Theresa May said, enough is enough.
All right, let me go over to Joel Whitaker, standing by in northern Iraq. Joel, we've covered this wall-to-wall when the London attacks happened back in March with you and Mandy, of course. And now, yet again, fast forward a few months later, we're doing the exact same thing, covering yet another terror attack. Why is there such an increase there? Are these homegrown? Are these perhaps recruits from groups like ISIS or Al-Qaeda, or sort of a combination of the both? Where do we stand? We don't have a whole lot of information, but perhaps we could extrapolate, given that there were already 2 previous incidences in the UK.
Yeah, I think, obviously we're still waiting for confirmation, but it's very likely that this is a terrorist attack linked to IS. Now, if it is homegrown, and again, we don't know, I do think that the opinion is starting to form now that we need to look at this from an education point of view, from an integration point of view within the UK. We do need good. The security services reacted within 8 minutes to neutralise 3 terrorists last night, and so they acted incredibly speedily and appropriately to the threat, and they dealt with it incredibly well. So there is absolutely an argument for having trained, armed security presence within the UK, and I personally would agree with that. But it needs to be balanced with, we are a multi-ethnic, a multiracial society. And I think that absolutely more needs to be done to integrate people more into our society, to make them feel more welcome. And that works from both sides of the fence, both the people who you might say are typical English and those who might be sort of second generation from abroad. Both sides need to work hard on this, and that should be led not only by the government, but certainly by the government to lead to better integration. And it's known as sort of social security, social security, social welfare. It means to make people look after themselves rather than sort of relying on a big brother security service.
All right, Joel, thank you for that update. Let me now go over to Mandy Clark standing by in London. Mandy, Joel talked about the security and their responses, how quickly they were able to sort of prevent this from getting bigger than it was. 8 minutes, remarkable if you take a look at it. 8 minutes to not only get to the scene, but also neutralize those 3 suspects. Certainly that one can say that certainly helped for more lives from being lost. We also heard from Theresa May saying that Britain foiled 5 recent terror attacks. It looks like the security forces are doing something right, even though there's so many situations happening there on the ground. What are you picking up from your sources there, evaluating the security situation on the ground?
Well, overall, the people here are very impressed at the speed of which the security services reacted. Also, there's reports that one British transport police officer took on the 3 attackers with a baton. So seriously, there's certainly no doubt of the pride that British people feel about the security services. But at the same token, the expectation cannot be that security services can cover everything, because this again was another kind of low-tech attack. It was anyone can get a hold of knives and a vehicle, and so it's very difficult for them to disrupt these type of attacks and stop every terrorism plot, because they just have to be successful once. The security services cannot be expected to stop every single attack that is being planned, especially when it comes to the lower tech ones that almost anyone can do.
Well, British Prime Minister Theresa May also raised a very pertinent issue. She also talked about this during her address. She had a Cobra meet earlier on reviewing the security situation. She in fact called for internet regulations in order to limit the safe spaces for elements like terror, a demand that more and more leaders of states are now making given the turbulent times and the fact that terror often finds a safe haven on online portals. Now, what are some of the ramifications of such a restriction? We're not sure just yet, but now there are also signs of a restricted digital space in the near future. So my question now to our guests with regards to this sort of touches upon a very interesting topic. Preventing terror, making sure there is perhaps government intervention in tracking social media sites or messaging services like WhatsApp, but also at the risk of privacy. I mean, it's a very fine line. Theresa May has addressed that, perhaps because this is the 3rd such attack on UK soil. Let me go over to Emil standing by in Manchester. Where do you stand on that issue? Should the government play more of a role in tracking some of these terrorists on their watch groups to prevent these type of situations, or is that really infringing upon privacy?
There's a very thin line there and the difference there. The government do track people. GCHQ and also other intelligence services are monitoring people online. But the thing is with these terrorists, a lot of them are going off onto other platforms into coded messages, so it's a lot harder for them. But I think more needs to be done by the social media groups. Certain groups like Facebook, YouTube and Twitter, and even WhatsApp, they need to start regulating. Even last week, I reported to Facebook an account of a British guy who's a convert to Islam who's supporting Islamic State online. I sent a message to reported his profile to Facebook. They didn't send me a message back saying we can't see anything offensive about it. The man was promoting hate, videos of Islamic State online, and Facebook refused to take his profile down. They have done now because the police have intervened, but I think it lies more with the social media groups who need to monitor what's going on the platforms. And not in that, it's people, everyone needs to start monitoring it, looking into it and reporting things to the police and to social media companies if anything that is hostile or terrorism linked.
All right, let me go over to Joel Whitaker, also standing by. Joel, sort of staying on that same subject, I mean, Theresa May raises an interesting question about that, but I mean, can these type of situations really be prevented even if there's that infringe over privacy? I mean, monitoring WhatsApps and Facebooks and, I mean, where do you draw the line? I mean, yes, there is more of a push and there is an awareness, but can there really be that sort of infringement over people's personal space when it comes to the digital front?
Yeah, and that's the age-old argument, is it security over privacy? And in times of crisis, like what we're facing at the moment, then I think a lot of people would start to feel that actually we prefer the security of being monitored to the privacy of having online hate messages from groups like IS and Daesh. Your last guest, Emil, hit it really well in that it's down to the organisations like Facebook and all the other social media platforms to monitor. But also for other people, like Emil's mentioned, he headed it up with Facebook. People who are using millions of people using Facebook. That's a lot of people who can observe and see issues online and report it. And then it came down to how quickly and how appropriately social media platforms like Facebook deal with it. And as your last guest just said, they didn't deal with it particularly well by the sounds of it. And so there should be a big push, and there has been a big push. The government of the UK has said, social media platforms like Facebook, like WhatsApp, need to take more ownership of the security of these social platforms. But it's a tough one because the threat changes. And so as a terrorist, let's say, feels that he could potentially be monitored, he'll just change his platform, change the means of communications. So again, it comes down to really a lot of people who use social media platforms keeping their eyes open, having their wits about them, and reporting what they say if they feel it's inappropriate.
All right, let's go over to Mandy Clark standing by in London. Mandy, we talked about this earlier during the London attack on the Westminster Bridge. A decade ago when the attack happened in 2005 July, one of the worst on UK soil, when there was an attack there. This changed, though. Social media really wasn't as prevalent then as it is now. I mean, some of the images that we saw, people whipping out their phones, capturing the dramatic moment. I mean, that certainly is going to help to a certain extent with authorities to track down these suspects. So certainly in that element, it does help. But when it comes upon privacy and infringement, it's a different story. I mean, where do we draw that line?
It's very difficult. Yes, in 2005, I was also on the ground for that terrible tube bombing, and the speed in which relatives could get information was pretty slow because there wasn't Twitter, there wasn't that way to get messages quickly out to the public. Now the rise of social media certainly has got a lot of information out quickly, but then we're seeing a lot of false information, fake news, so it does have its disadvantages. And I think to echo some of the sentiments of your previous guest, that people will choose security over privacy, and you're getting that sense. If there's more monitors, more checks on social media, it would be welcome.
All right, let's also now listen into a discussion that we had a short while ago, in fact, about global terrorism and what needs to be done. We spoke to an Indian American, Shruti Desai, who lives in the UK. She talks about life as an immigrant and how things are for her, and she says she's had worse experiences outside of the UK. Let's listen in.
I do think that people are very cognizant that this should not, change sort of our day-to-day lives. Theresa May gave a statement recently that said that there's far too much tolerance of extremism in our country. And, I sort of disagree with her, to be honest, because I think when we think about things of extremism and extremist ideologies, we need to really think as global citizens. And I think we need to really sort of remember that, when I think about the children in Manchester, I also need to remember the families in Baghdad who lost their lives, trying to get ice cream during Ramadan. So I think I'm trying to personally, and what I'm seeing from a lot of my friends is to think globally and not let these local incidences really shake us and really change who we are as people. We do have to be cognizant of these sort of upticks in hate crimes and, watching out that because of the color of our skin, maybe somebody will make some sort of assumption about us. Again, I have to really state that where I am in London and my experiences in London, and obviously I don't speak for everyone, I've been incredibly lucky in that I have felt really safe.
All right, so that brings up our next discussion point, Islamophobia. Let's talk about how incidences like this spate hate crimes for minorities and immigrant communities. Let me first start with Mandy Clark standing by in London. Mandy, when there are situations like this, unfortunately, we see people who really had nothing to do with the attack sort of pay the price, face the brunt. I mean, let's bring this into perspective with the UK dealing with its third terror attack in a matter of 3 months. What has been the mood like when it comes to that angle, Islamophobia, and dealing with minorities and immigrants? Have they faced some sort of racial slurs or abuse?
Absolutely. After the Manchester attack, we saw a doubling of hate crimes in Manchester, although the majority of the public were speaking of unity, but there's still these hate crimes that come as a backlash or a reaction to these terror attacks. We also are seeing police not only patrolling the streets of London, they're protecting mosques, they're protecting holy sites to really prevent the backlash on the Muslim community, which seems to be the community that's most often targeted after these attacks. So, and the problem is when we see these hate crimes increase, it's furthering those divisions in the community, and ultimately that's what ISIS wants, that's what terrorists want. They want to prove that a pluralistic society cannot survive, that all cultures cannot live together in harmony. So unfortunately, the hate crime only helps out the terrorist agenda.
All right, just a short while ago, we actually heard from the Assistant Commissioner talking about the latest updates. What exactly has happened nearly 24 hours since the attack? Let's listen into part of that interview.
We are making significant progress now in identifying the 3 attackers and confirming the fact that there were no other suspects at the scene when the attack was carried out. Work is ongoing to understand more about them, about their connections, and about whether they were assisted or supported by anyone else. As I think you're aware, there are searches ongoing in East London and 12 arrests have already been made. There is clearly more to do, and we will work relentlessly to get to the facts. I ask the public to remain calm but vigilant, and if you see anything suspicious, no matter how insignificant you think it might be, please don't hesitate to contact the police, either on 999 or the anti-terrorism hotline 0800 789 321.
All right, let me go over to Emil standing by in Manchester with regards to this. Let's talk about the security element of all of this, Emil. The terror level changing, recently after the attack in Manchester 2 weeks ago. So certainly authorities did know that there was possibly an attack imminent, an attack that may have happened. Let's talk about how that changes. What does that mean for the general public in the coming days? Are they going to see more troops deployed, more police presence? I mean, how important is that level in terms of really being able to address or prevent yet another attack?
Well, only 2 days ago, I was stood on London Bridge myself, and last night I was in Manchester. There is a big police presence around this. Armed police everywhere in the cities at the moment, especially here in Manchester and in London. So Could they have prevented last night's attack? I very much doubt it, because there was probably little intelligence leading up to the attack, because it is some men who jumped in a van and just driven it across the bridge. Very low-level tactics. But the intelligence service are doing an excellent job. The police are doing an excellent job, and they should be praised and credited for what's going on. With Op Tempora, with the troops for the weekend, bank holiday weekend, deployed on the street, the level went up to critical from severe, which it normally is. They stood down. The military stood down last Monday, but we were told, and we know, living in the United Kingdom, that attack is highly likely. And like I was saying, it's an insurgency war that's going on with these extremists. So the police are out in force at the moment, especially here in Manchester for the concert tonight, the memorial concert. The police are going to be everywhere, and they're trying to reassure the public to say, we're here, we're looking after you. But they can't get it right every time. People will slip through the net, and these attacks will happen. And no doubt we'll have more attacks here in the UK and in Europe. And where do we start? And you've got to understand, people are frustrated at the moment. People are worried. And so you can't really blame them. But at the moment, from what I'm seeing on the ground and speaking to people, the police are doing an excellent job in reassuring the public on the ongoing crisis.
Certainly, Emil, interesting perspective there. Interesting. You talked about the concert. In fact, just a few hours from now, Ariana Grande will perform. This after she suspended her recent concert after the bombings in Manchester 2 weeks back. She's set to hold a benefit concert for the victims of the suicide bomb blasts. The global music industry also standing in solidarity. Ironically, all of this happening just a day after London dealing with yet another terror attack.
On May 22nd, music lovers and American singer Ariana Grande's fans stood witness to a deadly terror bombing at the Manchester Arena in England. The bombing took place soon after Ariana Grande's concert, part of her world tour to support her third studio album Dangerous Woman, ended, throwing the entire world into a state of shock, including the global music industry. Musicians sent out their thoughts and prayers to Ariana Grande and the victims, survivors, and their families via Twitter, some even dedicating their performances to the tragedy.
When the morning rain, as the song shit to the bone.
I'd like to dedicate this song to my good friend Ariana Grande and everyone who experienced that horrific attack yesterday. Our hearts are with you.
The next few days saw many concert dates across England getting cancelled, including Grande's following performances at London's O2 Arena. But community that lies at the heart of music didn't succumb to the fears of terror and came back stronger. Manchester locals who followed a minute of silence in honour of the victims at St Anne's Square united in one voice to sing Don't Look Back in Anger by hometown heroes Oasis. Soon after, in an official statement released via Twitter, Ariana Grande announced a benefit concert for the victims of the tragedy, saying, I quote, "Our response to this violence must be to come closer together, to help each other, to love more, to sing louder, and to live more kindly and generously than we did before." The One Love Manchester benefit concert will be held at the Old Trafford Stadium on June 4th. All proceeds from the tickets will go to the We Love Manchester Emergency Fund, which has been set up by the City Council in conjunction with the British Red Cross. Many musicians, including Justin Bieber, Katy Perry, Miley Cyrus, Usher, Pharrell Williams and Niall Horan, have joined hands with Grande to headline the concert. Grande will also offer free tickets to fans who were present at her Manchester Arena show on May 2nd. Bureau Report, WION.
All right, Emil, let me go back to you really quickly. You're there in Manchester where all of this happened 2 weeks ago. The concert is about to happen in a few hours from now. Could parents perhaps see what happened in London and be a little bit more wary? I mean, people always say, they don't want terror to get to them. They don't want the terrorists to win. But given that this is the third attack, this just happened in London Saturday night, and at this Ariana Grande concert where innocent children, teens, teenage girls who were at the concert were killed. I mean, what's the mood like there? What are you picking up on the ground in Manchester with this concert just about to kick off in a few hours?
Well, I was out last night in a few bars, and I stood at a bar, and everyone was looking at the phone with the attack in London. So people are monitoring what's going on, and you could feel the mood just sink. People thinking, what next? When's it happening again? I don't think it's a question if if it's going to happen again, but when. And you can understand parents being a bit cautious about taking their children to the concert under the threat that's happening at the moment. People don't know when it's going to come next, and it will happen again. And this is what people are worried about. But there's no doubt the security around the concert is very secure tonight. There's a lot of police on the streets. And I would say to anyone, don't allow these terrorists to win. Get yourself out there and just stay vigilant and be cautious, but enjoy yourself. This is what these people want to do. They want to stop our freedoms. They want to stop us from enjoying ourselves. Like the people last night in London, enjoying a drink. Same with the Paris attacks on people out enjoying themselves. They shouldn't be allowed to win. And I recommend people to get yourself out there, but stay cautious and vigilant.
All right, Emil, we appreciate those inputs. We certainly encourage everybody to stay safe and vigilant. With that, we're going to take a quick short break here on WION. When we come back, we're going to discuss how the Islamic State is using ground in Iraq and Syria to push its envelope down. We're also going to continue this discussion about terror, not just on the UK angle, but on the larger European angle. We'll be right back.
You are safe in here. I want you to remain calm, remain seated. Through this lane. You go straight up the line.